Hey, welcome to the video. This is a video about assignment number 1, the Billie Jean assignment. Let's go ahead and get started. So as you guys can see, I have the instructions in front of me right now. So the first thing it says is to download and open the Billie Jean logic session and the 2 PDF files below. Okay, once you've done that, you should have a window that looks similar to this. You should have a logic session titled Billie Jean Assignment 1, a PDF called Billie Jean, a Billie Jean baseline PDF, and a Billie Jean chords PDF. Okay, once you've opened up that PDF, you should end up with something that looks like this. Basically, on this PDF, there are 2 parts that you're going to need to enter in. One of them is the melody of the song. This is basically what Michael Jackson sang in the song Billie Jean, this top one. It says melody. And then below that is the drum beat that's in the song, and you're going to need to recreate this as well. All of this, by the way, will need to be done in Logic Pro. Okay, so once we've downloaded those files, we'll be able to open up a logic session, which should look very similar to this. You will notice that there is a set of instructions in the notepad. To open and close this notepad, the shortcut key for that is Option Command P. And you'll notice that you have a total of 6 tracks over here on the right-hand side. They're all blank right now. You'll need to enter in information or musical parts into each one of these tracks by various methods. And there is one track that's currently not in our session right now, which we will add later, which will be the chords that were used in the song, and we'll need to add that once we get some further instruction. But we'll go ahead and focus on these parts for right now. And in addition to that, you guys will also have downloaded several PDFs. One of the first ones that you'll want to take a look at is the one that contains the melody and the drum part. Okay, and then you'll notice here on about the 3rd step, it says using Tempo Tyrant, tap along with Billie Jean and Spotify to find the BPM, and then set logic to this BPM. So remember, you can find a BPM of a song simply by opening up this Tempo Tyrant app and then simply clicking on the tap button. Here's our Tempo Tyrant app. If we want to find out the tempo of any song, all we have to do is come down here to the tap button and then just click on this at a quarter note value to find that tempo. So I'm going to go ahead and play a song for you and tap along, and we'll find out what the tempo of that song is. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and play this song, and then I'm just going to click on this tap button, and we'll find what that tempo is. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's getting on my nerves. I'm sick of wasting all my skills. It's not what I deserve. I'm sick.
Okay, so I think that song is 130 beats per minute, and this is basically exactly what you'll do. All you need to do is find the song Billie Jean online, and then go ahead and just open Tempo Tyrant and tap along, and then you'll be able to find out what the tempo is. Once you've done that, you'll want to go up to Logic and then set the tempo to be whatever the Billie Jean song is set at. Okay, so I'll just set that there, and then you guys find what that tempo is. So the next step is on track 1, choose the melody instrument. So we're going to need to choose a sound, and then once we do that, we're going to enter the melody notes shown in the PDF using step input using your MIDI controller. Okay, so as it says up here, I'm going to want to go ahead and choose a melody, and the way we can do that is if we hit I to open up the inspector. The first thing I would want to do is I'd want to go ahead and load up a software instrument of some kind. I'm going to go ahead and just choose the EXS24 sampler. This comes with Logic by default. So I'm going to go ahead and choose stereo. And then once I've done that, it'll bring up the plugin. We can get through the sounds in this plugin a couple ways. We can go ahead and go up to this area and click on that, and then go down to factory, and it'll show us all the different banks. And within each of the banks, there'll be subcategories, and then there'll be presets. We can choose sounds that way, or we can go ahead and just close the plugin and then hit the letter Y, and it will open up what's known as the library. So the letter Y is to open the library. The letter I is to open the inspector. So again, remember, you'll need to open the inspector to insert the plugin. And then once you do that, you can open up the library and then go to factory and then choose whatever sound that you might want to choose. Something that falls under the melodic category would probably be a good choice. So of course, a regular piano would work great. Strings would work good. Acoustic guitars would work good. Flutes, trumpets, anything like that that's a higher pitched instrument. Okay, so I went ahead and just chose the Electric Stage MK2 Mark II electric piano. It sounds like this. So that'll work fine for the melody. Let's go back to the instructions. So as it says here, we'll want to enter the melody notes shown in the PDF using step input and your MIDI controller. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the PDF. And what I'm going to want to do is open step input and enter these notes in. So we have an eighth note rest to start. We have a D on the and of 1, a D on beat 2, a D on the and of 2, and then D on beat 3. So I'm going to go ahead and just focus on entering in those first 4 notes and this rest. So the first thing we need to know is, well, how do we open up the step input keyboard, as well as how do we open up the score editor so that we can see the notes as we're putting them in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close the library by hitting the letter Y. And I think I'm going to go ahead and close the inspector as well. I want to go ahead and try to maximize the amount of real estate that I have to work with up here. So I'm going to go ahead now and bring up what's known as the floating score editor in Logic. I'm going to do that by hitting the shortcut key Command and the number 5, and it brings this up. And it's basically the floating version of this window. Okay, so we can go ahead and move this around. We can resize it. And then the other thing we need to know how to do is, well, how do we bring up the step input keyboard? So there is a shortcut key for that as well. It is Option Command K. And we'll go ahead and put that right down there. Now, the last thing that we want to be aware of is that our main counter is showing us all the information that we need. So we definitely want to make sure we can see bars. We definitely want to make sure we can see beats. And then divisions are important because this will show us if we're on the beat, which means this would be set to 1, or we're on the and of the beat, and this would be set to 3. The number over here to the right that says tick, we always want that to say 1. So if it ever says anything than 1, we want to stop for a second. Go ahead and make sure we set these back to the right numbers. Okay? Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually, the problem with just using the main transport window up here is that it gets covered up by other windows easily. So to help avoid that, I'm going to actually open up the floating version of this. So I'm going to go to Window. I'm going to go to Open Transport Float. And then we end up with this. Now, if you notice, it doesn't look the same as this one. So I'm going to, we're going to need to switch this. So I need to go down here to where the pull down arrow is, and we need to choose Beats and Project Large. And there we go. It looks just like the other one. I'm just going to go ahead and move it up here, basically kind of cover up the other one. This one just won't get covered up when we move windows around. Okay, so that actually comes in handy. Okay, so going back to the PDF, if we remember, just to refresh our memory, we start with an eighth note rest and then 4 notes of D that are eighth notes, one after the other. So how do we put in a rest with the step input keyboard? A lot of students get confused by this. You actually don't have to physically put the rests in. If you just simply move from bar 1, beat 1, division 1, if you move it to bar 1, beat 1, division 3, when you put in the eighth note that goes there, it will automatically generate the rest for you. So the first thing I would want to do is I'm going to use this step input keyboard to enter these notes in, and I'm going to choose the value of an eighth note. So if you want to put in eighth notes, make sure you choose eighth notes. If you want to put in quarter notes, make sure you choose quarter notes. We do need to put in eighth notes. We do need to create an eighth note rest. So if I click on the eighth note, and then if I just simply hit the right arrow key on my keyboard, on my computer keyboard, it will move me over to bar 1, beat 1, division 3. We are now on the and of beat 1. So now I can go ahead and put in the appropriate notes at this point, eighth notes, on the note D, which those Ds happen to be D5. And then I'm going to click, and there we go. There's our eighth note rest. There's our first eighth note. And it automatically scrolled us over from bar 1, beat 1, division 3, which was the and of 1, to bar 1, beat 2, division 1, which is on the downbeat of beat 2. So I'm going to go ahead and continue putting in my notes. And if you notice that it automatically is creating these in succession, so I need to go ahead and put 4 of these in there. Now, if we go back to the PDF, I need to take a look at what were some of the other notes that I needed to put in after that. So after the 4 notes of D, eighth note Ds, I need to put in an eighth note of C, an eighth note of B flat, and then an eighth note of C. Okay, so an eighth note on C5, an eighth note on B flat, 4, and then an eighth note on C5. And there is our beginning to our melody performance in our logic session. Now looking at this, it'll take a little while to go ahead and get all of these notes in. So I'm going to go ahead and start entering in these notes, and I will speed it up for you. Okay, so now we've got all of our notes put in for our melody. And if you take a look at the instructions, you'll notice that the next thing it asks us to do is to go ahead and label the intervals of the last 2 notes of each measure on our melody. So if we take a look at bar 1, we'll notice that we're going from B flat to the note C. We all should know at this point that that is what creates a major second interval. So I'll want to go ahead and go to the text tool, and then just click above the 2 notes anywhere, pretty much in that general vicinity. And then since it's a major second interval, I'm going to want to go ahead and type in uppercase M and the letter 2. Once I put that in, I'm going to go ahead and hit return, and it'll sort of lock in our interval. Let me go ahead and do one more. If we go to the end of bar 2 and we take a look at the last 2 notes, we'll notice that this one, based on our rule of accidentals, is still B flat, and the last note is the note D. So we should know that at this point we're looking at B flat to D, which is 4 half steps. That is a major third interval. So I'm going to click above that with the text tool selected and put in uppercase M and then the letter 3. And hit return to lock that in. The next step that comes is we need to choose a drum kit for our drum part. So I'm going to go ahead and close the score editor, and I'm going to choose the drum track by clicking on it. And then I'm going to go ahead and insert the drum kit designer on this track. So I'm going to hit the letter I for the inspector. I'm going to go here to where it says instrument and go to drum kit designer and hit stereo. Once the plugin is loaded, I'm going to go ahead and hit the letter Y for the library, and I'm going to choose Brooklyn Kit. The next step in our instructions is to put in the drum part on the drum track using step input. So we still have the step input keyboard up. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command 5 to bring up the score editor. And we want to make sure that we're looking at the drum track. So let's go ahead and make sure that that's active. I'm going to hit Command 5. There's our drum part. Now, one of the things that we always want to make sure that we remember when we're putting drum parts in, we want to make sure that it is shown in the drum clef, which we can click on right here. We can either do it here under Style and choose Drums, or we can go here and click on this little icon, which is the drum clef icon, and it'll show us the list there. We choose Drums. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the PDF of the drum part. Okay, so here's our drum part. So I noticed that the bottom note down here, if there's a note on the bottom line, this is the kick drum. The note on the middle line is the snare drum. And then the top notes up here, these are quarter notes on the bottom, the kick and snare. And then the top notes up here are the hi-hats, which are in eighth notes. So here we go. So we've got our step input keyboard up. I'm going to go ahead and hit return. I want to make sure that I'm at the beginning of my session. Bar 1, beat 1. Hit return. And then I'm going to go ahead and start off by putting in the kick drum and the snare drum because they're quarter notes. So I'm going to go ahead and choose quarter note. And if you remember, our kick drums are located on the note C2. And our snare drums are located on D2. So once again, I clicked on C2. It put in my quarter note, and it automatically moved me to beat 2. There's my snare drum, another kick drum, and then another snare drum. Now I just need to go back and put in my hi-hat part. So I'm going to go ahead and hit return. I'm going to choose eighth notes. That was the part that we were looking at for hi-hats. And then if you remember, we've learned that the hi-hat, the close hi-hat, is typically on this key right here, F sharp 2. There's our first hi-hat. It looks like a quarter note, but once we put in the next one, it'll tie them together. So now it looks like they are eighth notes. And there we go. There's our hi-hat part and our kick and our snare part for bar 1. Okay, the next step in our assignment was on track 3, record yourself playing steady eighth notes with the shaker sound provided. Do not quantize. So we just want to be able to hear your guys' natural feel of playing this in. So if we go back to our session, choose the shaker track, and then I just need to make sure that I can find G3 on my keyboard, which is the G right below middle C. So I'm going to go ahead and hit return. And then when we want to record on a track in real time in Logic, all we have to do is simply hit the letter R. And there we go. There's my shaker part. The next step says to record a snap part on beats 2 and 4 on the snap track, which is number 4. And we're going to want to record this snap part from bar 9 to bar 17. So if I select that track, I can do that by simply clicking on my main counter, typing in 9 to go to bar 9, and then we can go ahead and put in our snap track. And then I'm going to hit the letter R and just start putting in my snaps by playing my keyboard. Okay, there we go. Our snaps are done. Okay, so the next step says to go ahead and enter in our bass line. We can find that in our baseline, Billie Jean baseline PDF. We want to make sure that we put this in bass clef if it isn't already that way. And then we're going to go ahead and put in the appropriate notes for the baseline part. Okay, so it doesn't say whether we have to use step input or whether we need to play this in. So, since we've been using step input, I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. I'm going to go ahead and open up the score editor by hitting Command 5. And do you want to make sure this is in bass clef? I'm going to go ahead and open up the step input keyboard. look at my PDF and put in the appropriate notes from the PDF. So again, remember, these are all eighth notes, and I went ahead and made sure that I had eighth notes selected, and then I just went ahead and put in each one of these notes in order. Okay, so there we go. Our bass part is done. Okay, and then the last part says to go ahead and put in the chords, which we will learn about on the last day before the assignment is due. Okay, so remember, we've got to go ahead and open up our Billie Jean chords PDF. We'll get something that looks like that. We'll want to go ahead and put in these correct notes at the right places. We need all of these notes to stack up on top of each other, though, since we're building chords. So if we do use the step input keyboard for this, we do need to select an additional choice so that we can be in what's known as chord mode. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the step input keyboard, Option Command K, and to put our notes in a chord fashion, under normal circumstances, if we just click on a note, it'll put in an eighth note and move to the next location or the next eighth note in our session. So if we don't want it to do that, if we want to build the chords, we need to come over here to what's known as chord mode, click on that, and now we can go ahead and put in the chords that we are looking at in the PDF. Okay, so the first chord we want to put in is a B flat, a D, a B flat, a D, and a G, and it was a quarter note. So I'm going to go ahead and select quarter note. Let me go ahead and open up the score editor so I can see them as they're going in. Let's go ahead and change this to treble clef since that's what it looks like in the PDF. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on B flat. So it's B flat 3, D 4, and G 4. If we go back and take a look at the PDF again, we'll see that we need to leave beat 2 open and put in C, E, and A on the end of beat 2, and they need to be eighth notes. So I'm going to choose eighth note. I'm going to make sure that I'm at beat 2, the and of beat 2. So this needs to say 2, this needs to say 3. So if I hit the right arrow key until I get to beat 2, division 3, I can now put in C4, E4, and A4. And there's my first two chords in the song. Let's check to see if they look like they do in the PDF. And they do. Okay, so when we're all done with our session, it should look very much like this one. And let's go ahead and play it. Let's see what it sounds like. All right, you guys, so that wraps up our Billie Jean assignment. Hey, and if this video helped you out, please remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.